Hello, and welcome back to English Unlimited. If you can understand most of today's podcast, your English is probably around the B1 level. Today, I'd like to tell you the story behind one of the most common English words. You probably say it every day. You say it when you leave work. You say it after talking to a friend. You say it at the end of a phone call. The word is goodbye. It sounds simple. In fact, it's one of the first words many English learners study. But did you know that hundreds of years ago, people didn't say goodbye at all? Instead, they said something much longer. And the story behind this word tells us something interesting about history, language, and even the way people spoke to one another. Let's begin. According to the Oxford English Dictionary and other historical language sources, the word goodbye comes from an Old English expression. That expression was, "God be with ye." At first, it wasn't simply a way to end a conversation, it was actually a blessing. When people said, "God be with ye," they were wishing another person's safety, health, and protection until they met again. Remember that hundreds of years ago, traveling was much more dangerous than it is today. People often walked long distances. Roads weren't always safe. There were no mobile phones, no trains, no airplanes. Sometimes when people said goodbye, they didn't know when they would meet again. It could be weeks, months, or even years. So saying "God be with ye" carried real meaning. It was a sincere wish for another person's well-being. Over time, people began speaking more quickly. Just like today, language became shorter and easier to pronounce. Little by little, the expression "God be with ye" was shortened. As generations passed, people pronounced it differently. The words slowly blended together until they eventually became the word we know today, goodbye. Isn't that fascinating? Today, most people have no idea they're using a word that began as a blessing. This happens quite often in English. Words change, pronunciation changes, meanings change. Language is always moving. In fact, that's one reason English has become such a rich language. It has borrowed words from Latin, French, Greek, German, Norse, Arabic, Hindi, Japanese, and many other languages. Every word carries a little piece of history. Now let's think about the word bye. Have you ever wondered where that came from? Well, bye is simply a shorter version of goodbye. That's all. Just as people shortened "God be with ye" into goodbye, they later shortened goodbye into bye. Today, bye is much more common in everyday conversation. You might hear bye, bye-bye, see you later, take care, have a good one, talk to you soon. English has many ways to end a conversation. Each one sounds a little different. For example, bye, very casual. See you later, friendly. Take care, a little warmer. Have a great day, positive and polite. And then there's another interesting word, farewell. Unlike goodbye, farewell isn't used very often in everyday conversation anymore. You'll probably hear it in books, movies, speeches, or songs. The word comes from an old expression meaning travel well. Once again, we see that people wished others safety when they left. Language often reflects the way people lived. When travel was difficult, wishing someone a safe journey was important. Today, we still say, "Have a safe trip," or "Drive safely." Some traditions never disappear. Now, I'd like you to think about something. Do you usually say goodbye quickly? Or does it take you 5 or 10 minutes? Perhaps you've noticed that some people say goodbye and then continue talking. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You're standing at the door. You already said goodbye. Then someone remembers another story. 5 minutes later, you're still talking. It's funny, but it happens all over the world. Goodbyes are sometimes harder than we expect. Researchers who study conversations have found that endings are just as important as beginnings. A conversation doesn't simply stop. People often prepare for the ending. They summarize. They thank one another. They make plans to meet again. Only then do they finally say goodbye. Think about phone calls. How often do people really end a call with just one word? Usually it sounds more like this. Okay. Well, it was nice talking to you. Take care. See you next week. Bye. In other words, saying goodbye is almost a small conversation by itself. And that's where the story becomes even more interesting, because knowing where the word came from is only the beginning. Today, the word goodbye is only one of many ways to end a conversation. In English, the words we choose often depend on the situation. If you're leaving work, you might say, "See you tomorrow." If you're talking to a friend, you might simply say, "Bye," or "See you later." If someone is going on a trip, you could say, "Take care," or "Have a safe journey." Each expression sounds a little different. Native speakers don't usually think about these differences because they've heard them all their lives. But noticing them will help your English sound much more natural. Here's another useful expression. It was nice talking to you. People often say this at the end of a conversation. Imagine you've been chatting with someone after a meeting. Before leaving, you smile and say, "It was nice talking to you." Now compare that with, "It was nice meeting you." These expressions aren't the same. We usually say, "It was nice meeting you," when we've met someone for the first time. But if we already know the person, we normally say, "It was nice talking to you." It's a small difference, but native speakers use it all the time. Here's another interesting question. Have you ever noticed that people don't always mean exactly what they say? For example, someone might say, "See you later," even though they know they probably won't see you again that day. Or they might say, "Talk to you soon," without knowing exactly when that will happen. These expressions aren't meant to be exact. They're simply warm and friendly ways to end a conversation. English is full of expressions like this. Sometimes the feeling behind the words is just as important as the words themselves. Now, let's learn 2 more useful expressions. The first is to say goodbye. Some learners accidentally say, "I told goodbye," but native speakers almost always use the verb say. For example, "I forgot to say goodbye," or "She came back because she wanted to say goodbye." Another useful expression is to wave goodbye. Imagine your friend gets on a train. You stand on the platform. You smile. You wave goodbye. It's a simple expression, but you'll hear it often in everyday English. Learning expressions instead of single words is one of the best ways to improve your vocabulary. Now, let's think about something else. Why are goodbyes sometimes difficult? Researchers who study communication have found that people often remember the ending of an experience very clearly. Think about a movie. You probably remember how it ended. Think about your last vacation. You may remember your final day better than the middle of the trip. Conversations are often the same. A kind goodbye leaves a warm feeling. That's why many people don't rush the ending. They thank each other. They make plans. They wish one another well. Only then do they finally say goodbye. There's another lesson here for English learners. Many students spend most of their time learning how to start conversations. But finishing a conversation naturally is just as important. Expressions like, take care, see you tomorrow, it was nice talking to you, or have a great weekend can make your English sound much more confident. Here's a small challenge for you. The next time you watch an English movie or TV show, listen carefully to the last few seconds of each conversation. How do the characters say goodbye? Do they say, bye, take care, see you soon, or something completely different? You'll probably hear the same expressions again and again, and that's one of the easiest ways to learn natural English. Before we finish today's podcast, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Every ordinary word has an extraordinary history. The next time you say goodbye, remember that you're speaking a word that has traveled through hundreds of years of history. It began as a blessing. It became part of everyday speech. And today, millions of people use it without realizing the beautiful story behind it. That's one of the things I love most about language. Words aren't just sounds. They're little pieces of history that we carry with us every day. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed discovering the story behind the word goodbye. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to English Unlimited for more B1 English listening practice and more stories behind everyday English words. And now, I'd love to hear from you. How do you usually say goodbye in English? Or, if your language has a special way of saying goodbye, tell us about it in the comments and explain what it means. I'd love to read your answers. Thank you for listening. Take care and goodbye.